I just pushed, and the car slid down into the water. It was an accident. Those were the chilling words Frank Ace Ackerman whispered to detectives in 2023, 22 years after an entire family vanished without a trace on Christmas Eve. But forensic evidence would prove this wasn't an accident at all. It was cold-blooded murder, and the killer had been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. Welcome to Cold Crime Stories HQ. I'm your host, and before we dive into this shocking case that rocked Austin, Texas, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. Your support helps us keep these important stories alive. On December 24, 2001, Austin was wrapped in an unusually cold winter evening. A bitter chill hung in the air as families across the city prepared for Christmas morning. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, the Bellwether family was getting ready for what should have been a simple holiday tradition, driving out to Canyon Lake to find the perfect pine branch for their Christmas decorations. Ethan Bellwether, a 38-year-old tech industry manager, stood in his driveway, loading blankets into their 2001 Chevrolet Tahoe. His wife Chloe, a 36-year-old high school counselor, carefully wrapped scarves around their 3 children. 12-year-old Jackson bounced with excitement, while 9-year-old Lily chattered about Santa's arrival, and 5-year-old Eliza clutched her favorite red mittens, giggling as frost clouds formed with each breath. The family of 5 packed snacks and warm clothes into their dark blue Tahoe, its engine rumbling to life in the crisp December air. Around 7 p.m., they pulled out of their peaceful street, headlights cutting through the growing darkness as they headed toward I-35 South, bound for the Canyon Lake area near New Braunfels. Their first stop was a gas station in South Austin, where security cameras captured the last normal moments of their lives. Grainy footage showed Ethan filling the tank, while Chloe helped the kids stretch their legs. The children pressed their faces against the cold windows, breath fogging the glass as they peered out at the holiday lights decorating nearby businesses. By 8:15 p.m., the Bellwethers had reached a small diner in New Braunfels, just off the highway. The roadside cafe was a local favorite, especially popular with families making the drive between Austin and San Antonio. Inside, the warm glow of Christmas decorations created a cozy atmosphere as a handful of customers enjoyed their evening meals. Marie Chavez, a waitress working the holiday shift, later recalled the family's arrival with crystal clarity. The door chimed as all 5 entered, their cheeks rosy from the cold night air. Ethan ordered coffee to go while Chloe guided little Eliza to a booth, the older children following close behind, eyes wide as they took in the twinkling lights and the aroma of fresh-baked pies. But what Marie remembered most vividly wasn't the cheerful family. It was the man sitting alone in the corner booth, a stocky figure with graying hair and intense, cold eyes that never left Ethan Bellwether. The man nursed a single cup of coffee, his weathered hands gripping the mug as he watched every move the family made with an unsettling intensity. At 9 p.m. sharp, Ethan gathered his family and they headed back to their Tahoe. Marie watched through the diner window as their headlights disappeared into the December darkness, driving south toward Canyon Lake. It was the last time anyone would see the Bellwether family alive. Christmas morning arrived with no word from the family. Lauren Hartley, Chloe's sister, grew increasingly worried as her calls went straight to voicemail. When Christmas afternoon passed without any contact, Lauren's unease turned to panic. That evening, she called the Austin Police Department, her voice trembling as she reported her sister's entire family missing. Think about it. A simple click on subscribe could help keep these cases from turning into cold files nobody cares about. Wouldn't you want someone to do that for you? The initial police response was swift, but hampered by the holiday. By December 26th, search teams were combing the route between Austin and Canyon Lake. Helicopters swept over the winding roads near the lake, their spotlights piercing the winter darkness as they searched for any sign of the missing Tahoe. The terrain around Canyon Lake presented unique challenges. Unlike the flat Texas plains, this area featured rolling hills, dense woods, and numerous hidden ravines where a vehicle could disappear without a trace. Search and rescue teams focused on the most dangerous curves along Highway 46, where a moment's inattention could send a car plunging into the lake's depths. For 3 days, dozens of officers scoured every inch of shoreline. Dive teams plunged into the lake's murky waters, but visibility was nearly zero and the currents treacherous. They recovered nothing more than old tires and rusted debris, none connected to the missing family. As the search expanded, investigators began interviewing the last people to see the Bellwethers alive. Marie Chavez provided crucial testimony about the mysterious man who had watched the family so intently. She described him as approximately 45 years old, stocky build, with graying brown hair and piercing eyes. Most disturbing was his behavior, the way he stared at Ethan Bellwether with what she could only describe as pure hatred. He wasn't just looking, Marie told detectives. He was studying them, like he was planning something. But when police requested the diner security footage, they hit a devastating roadblock. The outdated system only stored 3 days of recordings, and by the time investigators arrived, the crucial evidence had been automatically overwritten. The mystery man's identity remained unknown, existing only in Marie's haunting description. Meanwhile, the investigation took a darker turn when detectives began examining Ethan Bellwether's personal relationships. Among his neighbors and acquaintances, one name kept surfacing: Frank Ace Ackerman, an unemployed contractor who lived just 3 houses down from the Bellwethers. Ackerman had borrowed $15,000 from Ethan 6 months earlier for what he claimed was a surefire construction project. The project failed spectacularly, and Ackerman found himself unable to repay the debt. Neighbors recalled heated arguments between the two men in the weeks leading up to the disappearance, including one particularly violent confrontation where Ackerman was heard shouting threats. "You'll regret not giving me more time," one neighbor remembered Ackerman screaming at Ethan. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." On December 30th, 2001, detectives arrived at Ackerman's modest home for questioning. The 47-year-old man appeared disheveled and agitated, claiming he had spent Christmas Eve alone, drinking beer and watching television. But his alibi was paper-thin. No friends or family could verify his whereabouts, and neighbors hadn't noticed any activity at his house that night. When pressed about his financial dispute with Ethan, Ackerman became defensive and hostile. "Yeah, I owed him money," he admitted grudgingly. "But that doesn't make me a killer. I was trying to figure out how to pay him back." A search of Ackerman's property yielded no physical evidence connecting him to the disappearance. His old pickup truck showed no signs of recent use, and there were no bloodstains or other suspicious materials anywhere on the premises. Without concrete proof, police had no choice but to let him go. The investigation continued for months, but leads grew cold as quickly as they appeared. By summer 2002, the case had been unofficially shelved, joining the growing stack of unsolved missing persons files. The Bellwether family seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions and heartbreak. If you won't subscribe, fine, but don't leave quietly. Drop a comment and tell me why, because ignoring these cases without a word helps no one. For 2 decades, the case gathered dust, while Lauren Hartley refused to give up hope. She organized annual vigils outside Austin City Hall, holding candlelit ceremonies every Christmas Eve to keep her sister's family in the public consciousness. Initially, hundreds attended these emotional gatherings, but as years passed, the crowds dwindled to a faithful few dozen who remembered. In 2018, Detective Valeria Val Reyes joined the Austin Police Department's newly formed Cold Case Unit. At just 29 years old, Reyes brought fresh eyes and modern technology to cases that had long been considered unsolvable. When she pulled the Bellwether file from storage, she was struck by how many leads had never been fully pursued due to technological limitations of the early 2000s. Reyes began by re-examining every piece of evidence with current forensic capabilities. She also reached out to civilian volunteer organizations who used advanced sonar equipment to locate submerged vehicles in Texas lakes and rivers. The Austin Underwater Recovery Team had been instrumental in solving several cold cases, and they eagerly agreed to survey Canyon Lake. On November 15, 2019, the recovery team launched their boat equipped with state-of-the-art side-scan sonar. The device could create detailed 3D images of the lake bottom, far superior to anything available in 2001. After hours of systematic searching, the sonar operator suddenly called for everyone's attention. At approximately 85 feet deep, near the lake's eastern shore, the sonar had detected a large, rectangular object with 4 circular protrusions, exactly what you'd expect from a submerged SUV. The team marked the GPS coordinates and immediately contacted Detective Reyes. The recovery operation took place on a cold February morning in 2020. Professional dive teams worked for hours to secure cables around the submerged vehicle. When the crane finally lifted it to the surface, there was no doubt about what they had found. Despite nearly 2 decades underwater, the dark blue Chevrolet Tahoe was unmistakably the Bellwether's missing vehicle. The license plate, though corroded, was still readable. Texas, to be honest, 4429, matching Ethan's registration exactly. But it was what investigators found inside that transformed this from a missing persons case into a homicide investigation. Human remains were discovered in all 5 seats, along with personal belongings that told a heartbreaking story. Eliza's red mittens, now faded and waterlogged, were still clutched in tiny bone fragments. A child's backpack containing Christmas gifts the family had planned to exchange. Chloe's wedding ring, tarnished but intact. Most critically, forensic examination revealed that the Tahoe's airbags had never deployed. In a crash severe enough to send the vehicle into the lake, the safety systems should have activated. The fact that they hadn't suggested the SUV had been deliberately pushed while stationary or moving very slowly. Further analysis of the vehicle's exterior revealed scratches and dents consistent with forced entry. The rear liftgate showed signs of having been pried open, and microscopic paint transfers indicated contact with another vehicle or heavy tool. The forensic report was unambiguous. This was no accident. The Bellwether family had been murdered, their vehicle deliberately pushed into Canyon Lake to conceal the crime. Every time someone skips subscribing, another story like this risks being forgotten. Don't let that happen. Hit subscribe, and make sure these voices are never silenced. With the case now officially classified as a quintuple homicide, Detective Reyes immediately focused on the prime suspect who had evaded justice for 20 years, Frank "Ace" Ackerman. Now 68 years old and living in a run-down apartment complex in East Austin, Ackerman had never left the area, seemingly confident that his crime would never be discovered. Reyes began building her case methodically. She tracked down Marie Chavez, the former diner waitress, who positively identified Ackerman from a photo lineup as the man who had been watching the Bellwether family that final night. Though Marie was now in her 60s, her memory of that Christmas Eve remained vivid and unwavering. "I've thought about that night every Christmas for 20 years," Marie told Detective Reyes. "That man's eyes, they were full of hate. I knew something terrible was going to happen." But Reyes needed more than eyewitness testimony to secure a conviction. Modern forensic techniques allowed her team to re-examine evidence that had been technologically useless in 2001. Using advanced DNA analysis and fingerprint enhancement, they made a breakthrough discovery. Partial fingerprints recovered from the Tahoe's rear liftgate provided a match to Frank Ackerman. The prints had been degraded by decades underwater, but new computer algorithms could enhance and compare them with unprecedented accuracy. The probability of a false match was less than 1 in 10 billion. Even more damning was evidence found inside the vehicle. Blood traces on the rear seats, invisible to 2001 technology, were revealed through luminescent testing. DNA analysis confirmed the blood belonged to 9-year-old Lily Bellwether, suggesting she had been injured during a struggle before the vehicle was submerged. In March 2021, nearly 20 years after the murders, Frank Ackerman was arrested at his apartment on 5 counts of first-degree murder. The 68-year-old man showed little reaction as handcuffs were placed around his wrists, his face displaying the same cold indifference that Marie Chavez had noticed decades earlier. The arrest sent shockwaves through Austin. Neighbors who had lived near Ackerman for years struggled to comprehend that a killer had been in their midst. The local media coverage was intense, with headlines proclaiming Christmas Eve killer finally caught and 2 decades of justice delayed. During his initial interrogation, Ackerman maintained his innocence, claiming he had been at home alone on Christmas Eve 2001. But when Detective Reyes presented him with the fingerprint evidence and DNA results, his composure began to crack. "You were there that night," Reyes stated calmly. "Your fingerprints are on their car. Lily Bellwether's blood is on the seats. A witness saw you watching them at the diner. What happened, Frank?" Ackerman's attorney advised him to remain silent, but the weight of evidence was overwhelming. In a moment of weakness, Ackerman made a crucial slip when discussing the crime scene details that only the killer could have known. The trial began in September 2022, drawing national attention to the Austin courthouse. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh presented a methodical case, walking jurors through 21 years of investigation that culminated in irrefutable evidence against the defendant. Marie Chavez, now 64, took the stand as the prosecution's key witness. Her testimony was powerful and emotional as she described watching Ackerman stare at the Bellwether family with undisguised malice. When asked to identify the man from that night, she pointed directly at the defendant without hesitation. "That's him," she said firmly. "I'll never forget those eyes." The forensic evidence was equally compelling. Expert witnesses explained how modern technology had revealed fingerprints and DNA that were undetectable in 2001. The airbag analysis proved the vehicle hadn't crashed, but had been deliberately pushed into the lake while stationary. People vanish every day, and their names fade faster than you think. If you don't subscribe, you become part of the silence that erases them. Ackerman's defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial, and that their client's financial troubles didn't make him a killer. They suggested the murders could have been committed by an unknown assailant, possibly someone the family encountered during their lake trip. But the prosecution's case was too strong. The combination of motive, opportunity, physical evidence, and eyewitness testimony painted a clear picture of premeditated murder, driven by financial desperation and personal hatred. On October 31, 2022, nearly 21 years after the murders, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all 5 counts of first-degree murder. Frank Ace Ackerman was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in applause as the verdicts were read. Lauren Hartley, who had waited over 2 decades for justice, broke down in tears as she addressed the media afterward. "My sister Chloe, my brother-in-law Ethan, and my precious nieces and nephew can finally rest in peace," she said through her tears. "This doesn't bring them back, but it proves that evil doesn't get to hide forever." Detective Valeria Reyes was praised for her tireless work on the case. Her methodical approach and use of modern forensic technology had accomplished what seemed impossible, solving a 20-year-old cold case and bringing a killer to justice. The Bellwether case became a textbook example of how advancing technology can breathe new life into cold cases. Police academies across Texas now use it as a training scenario, demonstrating the importance of preserving evidence and never giving up on seemingly hopeless investigations. During his sentencing hearing, Frank Ackerman finally admitted his guilt in a rambling, self-pitying statement. He claimed the murders were the result of a momentary loss of control, triggered by his financial desperation and Ethan's refusal to extend his loan deadline. "I followed them that night," Ackerman confessed. "I just wanted to talk to Ethan, to make him understand how desperate I was. But when I saw him laughing with his family, spending money on Christmas trips while I was losing everything, something inside me snapped." He described forcing the family's vehicle off the road near a secluded boat ramp, then using a tire iron to break the rear window when they tried to escape. The children's screams haunted him, he claimed, but he couldn't stop himself from pushing the Tahoe into the lake with all 5 family members trapped inside. "I watched it sink," Ackerman said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I watched the headlights disappear under the water and knew I had become a monster. But I was too much of a coward to confess." The judge showed no mercy during sentencing, noting the particularly heinous nature of murdering an entire family, including 3 young children, over a financial dispute. "You destroyed 5 innocent lives and shattered countless others," the judge stated. "You will spend the rest of your days behind bars, which is far more mercy than you showed the Bellwether family." If you can sit through this story but can't click subscribe, then ask yourself, What would you expect from the world if it was your face on a missing poster? Today, a memorial stands at Canyon Lake, where the Bellwether family's Tahoe was recovered. The simple granite marker reads, "In memory of the Bellwether family, Ethan, Chloe, Jackson, Lily, and Eliza. Christmas Eve, 2001. Gone, but never forgotten." Lauren Hartley visits the memorial every year on the anniversary of their disappearance. She brings flowers and photos, spending quiet moments, remembering the family she lost and the decades-long fight for justice that finally succeeded. The case also sparked changes in how Texas law enforcement handles missing persons investigations. New protocols ensure that cold cases are regularly reviewed, with updated technology, and victim families are kept informed of any developments, no matter how much time has passed. Detective Valeria Reyes continues her work with the Cold Case Unit, inspired by the Bellwether family's story to never give up on seemingly impossible cases. She keeps a photo of the family on her desk as a reminder that behind every file number are real people whose lives matter, no matter how much time has passed. The Bellwethers waited 21 years for justice, Reyes reflects. But justice did come. It's never too late to find the truth, never too late to hold killers accountable for their crimes. The Austin community was forever changed by this case. It served as a stark reminder that evil can hide behind the facade of neighborly friendship, and that vigilance is always necessary to protect the innocent. But it also demonstrated the power of persistence, advanced forensic science, and the unwavering love of family members who refuse to let victims be forgotten. Frank Ackerman will spend the rest of his life in a Texas prison cell, a 68-year-old man finally paying for the 5 lives he destroyed on that cold Christmas Eve in 2001. His arrest brought closure to one of Texas's most haunting cold cases, and proved that no matter how much time passes, justice will eventually find its way to the truth. The Bellwether family story reminds us that behind every missing person case is a family waiting for answers, a community searching for closure, and investigators who refuse to give up. In a world where people disappear and cases go cold, it's the persistence of people like Lauren Hartley and Detective Valeria Reyes that keeps hope alive. Their sacrifice was not in vain. If it reminds us to cherish our families, trust our instincts about dangerous people, and never stop fighting for justice, no matter how long it takes. Thank you for joining us for this heartbreaking but ultimately hopeful story of justice delayed but not denied. The Bellwether family finally has the peace they deserved, and their killer will never hurt another family again. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Cold Crime Stories HQ and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into cases that demand to be remembered. Share this video with others who believe in justice, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. Remember, every cold case represents real families still waiting for answers. Until next time, keep seeking the truth.